Hi everyone. I've started this series on the testimonies of my life, and in the last one, I shared about my childhood and up to the point of my first really great encounter with God when I was praying with my friends in the basement. And I would like to continue from that story. Um, After that experience where I was crying and laughing and prophesying out loud in the basement, I felt terrible. I felt like I was so sick mentally that maybe I just made myself think that it was God, but actually it was just an emotional reaction, maybe a symptom of a mental illness, but maybe I was just so longing for a real experience that I just hyped myself into it. So I felt terrible for 2 days, and then I met my friends, and they told me, all of them told me, without saying anything about how condemned I felt. I felt the days before. They kept telling me one by one how they were touched by the prophecies I shared and the things I told them on that night. And and I had to realize that okay, it was something real. It wasn't just my emotional reaction or the projection of my desire for spiritual experiences. Um, yeah, so I was really happy about like knowing that God really came close to me. And there was another aspect to it. I was really struggling in the weeks and months before because I felt like I don't have what my friends in ministry had, and I don't have that touch from God, that livingness inside of me, and I was so desperate. I wanted to quit the whole ministry. I wanted to leave the whole thing. I felt so inadequate, and there was one thing that kept me away from that decision, and it was that the leaders of this ministry told us that there will be a ministry group uh, coming from the US to minister to us, just for us. They come just for us, and it's gonna be amazing and life changing. So we should really wait for that. And I was like, I would really like to quit now, but maybe something happens when they come, and that's why I stayed. And the funny thing about this is that when they came, it was really great, and there was a great outpouring of the Holy Spirit, and the lives of many people in the ministry uh, were changed on that week when they were there with us. But for me, the turning point happened a week before the Americans arrived. Um, so Jesus came just for me on an ordinary prayer meeting, and touched me in a way that changed my life and relationship with God forever, without any great man of God, without any special ministry team. And it's such a testimony for me that he could have touched me with everyone else when the Americans came and prayed for everyone. But Jesus arranged the things in a way that he would come and visit just me a week before. So it was awesome. And when the Americans came, we had meetings every day. They were praying for us, and most of my friends were falling on the floor and shaking and having heavenly visitations and all kinds of experiences. And nothing happened to me. They were there. It felt good that they were there. When they prayed for me, it felt okay, but I had no special manifestation or nothing what the others experienced, and I was really upset. Like I was waiting for that that they come and they bring their their special anointing or something, and I know that it sounds screwed up to wait for some particular manifestation or wait for someone else to like give you God. But at that point, that's how I, you know, that's how I related to God, and that's how I could express my desire for Him. Um, so it was quite a long week with meetings every day, and nothing ever happened to me. I remember on one of the evenings, everyone was just on the floor. Like everyone got touched, except for me and for some other people, but most of them were really touched. And I lived in a dormitory at this time, and it was closed um, um, at midnight, so I had to go back. But I I was thinking like maybe I should stay. Maybe if I stay, God would touch me. If I go home and I miss the touch of God because I had to go home, it's so silly. Like I I couldn't bear the thought of missing God and an experience with God just because I had to go home on time. So I thought to myself, I don't care what happens or where I'm gonna sleep. I'm gonna stay here. And I stayed there and nothing happened. Except for someone offering me a place to stay for the night, and it was a very nice place. It was a luxury place, so it was like really fancy, and I really loved it. The only thing I experienced on that night is that as we were giving a lift to all the people and taking them home, uh, we were just listening to worship in the car, and we were racing through the city at night, and I felt so free and so full of joy and so full of life. I felt like I and God, we are inseparable. We're gonna enjoy each other forever, and it wasn't a thought. It felt like that. So it was a great that not when everyone else had a touch from God, I still had on the way back home. Um, I remember um, I was quite envious that the other people could, fall in the presence of God. And don't misunderstand me. It's not about falling, but at this point, falling was equal to allowing God to take over you or giving yourself up to God. So that's why I was really into falling. Um, and I remember in my childhood I had that kind of experience, and for a very long time I didn't, and now I was really longing for it. So I was really envying others. And on the last night, everyone was like having great experiences and I didn't, and I was really longing for it. And then I told my friends, okay, now I'm gonna fall, now I'm gonna have this experience. I stood up, and as I could feel, mm, there was something in the air, I was like, oh no. And it wasn't a conscious decision. Like, it wasn't my mind telling no. I just froze inside. Like, I just stopped it. But it was very annoying because it wasn't with my mind. Like, I subconsciously somehow stopped it. And I was really, really upset with myself. Like, everyone else can have this experience. Why can't I? Like, I even have a history of it falling on the floor. Like, all the other people experienced it for the first time, and they could still allow it. God, uh, they can still allow God to happen. But yeah, I was so confused, and I walked up to the front and I told to myself that now I'm gonna allow it to happen, and I'm gonna fall. Even if it's not from the spirit, but from me, from my flesh, I'm gonna fall. And if I fall not from the spirit, but from my decision, then what's that? Like, it's a human thing, so it's not not that bad. Like, um, the worst thing that could happen that it won't be from the spirit. So I walked up, and as the minister came up to me, I decided to fall down, and it was my choice. I know it sounds quite misunderstandable, but it was my choice, and I don't say that it should be, but in my case, only way I could surrender was deciding to fall. And it was absolutely because of my decision I ended up on the floor. And when I ended up on the floor, something took over me. I was like shaking and laughing periodically, and there were times when I was just laying there, quite unconscious. The only thing I had in mind that something is going on with me, but it wasn't like God was telling me something, or not much conscious part of this experience. But I knew that it's very important what's going on with me, and I had to stay there as long as possible. So all the sound equipment and all the cables and all the chairs had been removed by the time people picked me up from the floor. And I was so drunk, I was like um, climbing my way out of this room, and I was falling and hitting people while I was walking. And I realized that I missed my dormitory. Um, like the opening hours are over, and I realized I had to stay on the streets for that night, but I didn't care. Um, there was a girl next to me, and she asked me on the elevator as I was walking out of the building, like, "Do you have a place to stay tonight?" And no, no, but I don't really care. It's fine. I'm gonna stay at the non-stop grocery store, and like, she was like, "Okay, you can come to me." Um, so that's how it went, and God provided for that as well. The funny thing about this week, when this Americans ministered to us, was that most of the people had amazing encounters, and after a few weeks or months, they they took these encounters as some kind of great memory. It was a great starting point. It was a great encounter. We should remember that. And and I was so upset about it. Like, you think it's over. You think it's a nice memory. Like, if this kind of experience of Jesus is available and possible, and if it's an option to live in that, like, I will never ever live in anything less than that. Like, you can't make me think that it's a nice memory to tell to your grandkids later. Like, I had this incredible attraction toward God. Like, I must live this. And yeah, I loved uh, ministering to people after these experiences, prophesying, praying for healing. I saw some miracles. I got to know a lot of friends who were walking in the same things, and it was great. Um, and then this school year was over, where we had this um, great worship events with that youth movement where I was a volunteer. And this youth movement had this break in the summer, so we had no regular um, meetings or anything like that. And some of my friends were so desperate that we can't um, worship together many times a week um, on these worship events, that they decided to start a prayer group uh, as a supplement or something. And I was invited, and there were like 3 people on that prayer event. And all I was doing is praying for the 2 other, and I could see some great work of the Spirit while praying for them. Like, one of them was getting healed emotionally and getting delivered from things. And the funny thing that happened to the other one is who is a great friend of mine. She went into a heavenly experience while I was praying for her, and it happened in a way that I spoke for Jesus, first person singular. I was speaking for Jesus, and I was also describing her surroundings and where she was. I described the whole vision, and she had the conversation with Jesus inside, and without knowing it, I always reacted to her thoughts as Jesus, but only I was speaking, she wasn't. So she had a conversation and experience with Jesus by me talking for Jesus and describing the scenery. And I didn't know that. I was just prophesying as regular. I didn't know that it was very special. I saw her crying, so I thought maybe she's getting touched by God. I was hoping that I wasn't doing something bad to her. And when it was over, we just said hi, and we didn't really share who experienced what. Not until a few weeks later, when she told me, Evie, do you remember when we were both in heaven together? And I was like, no, we weren't in heaven for sure. But you remember when you were speaking for Jesus? And I was like, yeah, I remember speaking for Jesus, but it was a simple like prophecy or something. No, it was very real. Everything you told about, like the surroundings and all the dialogues and reactions of Jesus, they were all real. I was in that experience, what you described. So it was a very funny um, realization that it actually happened to her, everything I told her, and he actually heard Jesus um, through me. Um, on that evening, I was like, okay, Jesus, you touched all these people. Like, what about me? I want to experience you as well. And I was just standing there and telling Jesus, like, you should come now. And then I was falling on the couch, and I completely lost all natural senses for a while. Um, I know it might sound a bit weird, but I didn't need to breathe for a while. Like, I was so dependent on God that I didn't need air for a while. I don't say that it was a long while, maybe it was just a few minutes, but I was completely suspended from all earthly things. In my mind, there wasn't much going on. Maybe white light, or maybe enjoying the fact that I'm overwhelmed. Um, that's all. So it was a starting point for a little prayer meeting. And then we decided to um, meet every week. And we were just listening to worship songs on the phone and praying for each other and prophesying to each other. We were desperate to experience Jesus more. And that's what we were doing at home, like practicing the presence as much as we could. And when we got together, we shared our experiences, and then we practiced the presence together. So that's how we lived. It was a whole summer holiday that we spent this way. Like like um, we met sometime in the evening or in the afternoon, maybe rather in the evening, and we went down to a basement to worship together, or we went down to the bank of Danube uh, to to worship and pray for each other. Sometimes we went to some uh, fast food place, and we were worshiping there, and we did that usually until early in the morning, and then we went home, and I remember sleeping until noon or early in the afternoon. I spent the whole afternoon waiting on Jesus and practicing the presence, and sometime in the evening we continued with the friends um, somewhere in the city. So that's how I lived. It wasn't normal, but it was worth it. Only thing I can say about this season is that that's the time when I learned to value the presence of God, both for myself, but also I learned how to live in the presence of God while being around people. So yeah, I think it was a very determining thing for everyone who was part of this. Um, and of course, we became very good friends with all those who was in this, and still we are. And I remember waiting on God on these afternoons, and I didn't know how to do it. I didn't get much help. I didn't really have a role model in that. So I had to go through all the roundabouts and all the misconceptions on my own, because all the others were also in the beginning of this journey. So we could help each other a bit, but not too much. Um, yeah, it was amazing though that after waiting for hours, something happened. Not always, but sometimes. And it blew my mind, all the visions and power manifestations. And I also remember encountering great resistance. Like people tell in Christian circles, like charismatic circles, that, oh, the spiritual warfare is when you pray for the city, or spiritual warfare is when you break down strongholds and occupy new territories and things like that. I don't know much about this. I was praying for deliverance and ministering to people in all ways. But the most resistance I experienced when I was waiting on God, and when I decided that I'm gonna go down this road and find out how to live my life in the presence of God. Yeah. So I don't want to discourage you the with these bad manifestations I had, because they were sometimes terrifying, but God protected me 100%. So that's what He's gonna do with you when you do this, when you are on this journey uh, of experiencing God and learning to live in His presence. But they were tough. Like, I was ministering deliverance to like very, very possessed people, and the resistance coming with that was nothing comparing to the resistance I was experiencing when I decided to learn how to enjoy Jesus daily. Um, and I was ministering at this youth movement, and I was also doing this prayer event, and and I really loved the way these things shaped my relationship with Jesus. Like, usually I went there early so that I can pray and worship before the event, and I spent the whole event uh, with Jesus or ministering to people. And the best thing about it is that these worship events were so long, like from 8 p.m. till 3 a.m., that you couldn't talk and eat and chat as much to take the whole time. There was a point for certain when you came to when you came to just sit down and meet Jesus and enjoy worship and just be there. And at these times I learned how to experience Jesus in community and experience Jesus beyond manifestations in silent worship. I think it was a great lesson to learn. Yeah, so basically, the reason why these events were so great, that they were so long, that you certainly had to come to the point when you sat down and you did nothing and you became aware of the presence of God. And I also loved the fact that I could minister to people on these events. And as I was living a quite an abnormal life, like according to worldly standards for sure, like not much sleep, all my life in the presence. Um, I told God like, oh, just 1 more month, I'm gonna spend like that. And my idea was that I would find out how to live in the presence. And when I find it out, then I'm gonna start to live a normal life based on this knowledge and with that approach. And the most advantageous thing about this idea was that I allowed God to clear out everything uh, in my life. Like I literally didn't do anything else, just the presence and just ministering to people, and it was amazing. Um, um, but it wasn't just a short season as I thought. Like I thought it would be like 1 or 2 months. No, it was 1 year and then another one. And I had this misconception after a while that if I don't do anything like a career or family life, maybe I should minister instead. Like that's the thing you should do uh, instead of a career. So if you don't have a career in the secular world, then you should have a ministry life. And I had this misconception that God saved me for His assembly line, so that I could make changes in the kingdom and do something great. And it's quite a dangerous misconception. It sounds super spiritual, but it isn't. It's a lie, actually. That you're, because you are saved for yourself. You are saved for Him. He saved you because He wanted to be with you, period. There was no other thought uh, in the back of His mind. He had no other intentions uh, that He's hiding from you. He saved you just for you to experience Him. And I didn't have that understanding, so I started to minister everywhere. You couldn't organize a conference in Hungary at this time where I wasn't on the ministry team to pray for people. And it wasn't that bad actually. So I had a lot of testimonies. I could learn about inner healing and how to uh, help people and minister healing and deliverance. So I loved it actually. But after a while, I became very burned out. Like, so burned out that everyone said a testimony or shouted hallelujah. I was like, stop it now. Like, I'm gonna leave if you shout another hallelujah. So, and it was quite natural because I thought that it's something I should do. Like, there is no other option. Either I can either make a great career in the world, or I can make a minister life. And minister life sounded more spiritual, so that's the only option for me. Um, and it was such a lie, and it cost me so much. Um, I became very depressed and weighed down, and I had a lot of false responsibilities on my shoulder. Like I had to do this, I had to produce enough miracles to be spiritual enough. I had to be, good enough in ministry, at least, if I gave up everything else. So it was quite tough. And at the same time, I really felt the drawing of the Spirit. Like, I really felt like there must be something more. more than the gifts, more than experiencing miracles, more than having experiences with Jesus every now and then. There must be way more than this, and I'm gonna give everything for finding it out. And there was a friend of mine who had a small farm in outside of Budapest, in a very rural region and 2 kilometers away from the road, with no electricity or water. And I decided to spend there 1 or 2 months. I thought if I spend there 1 or 2 months, I'm gonna become a super Christian. Like, I'm gonna have heavenly visitations every day, and so I'm gonna show to the Christian world what they are missing. Um, that's what I had in mind. It sounds so arrogant, but a part of it was my crazy desire for Jesus. And I also knew that ministry life is not a path for me. Like, I had to find something else. And I was also really longing to learn to live in his presence, not just visiting it. So I moved to this little cottage house. It's actually a little wooden shack in the middle of the woods. Um, and I spent there not 2 months, but 2 years. And it sounds very spiritual. Like, I spent 2 years seeking God. It wasn't that spiritual. Most of it was struggle. Most of it was going roundabouts and wasting time and effort, because I was striving too hard and I didn't know how to spend time with God and in silence. So all I knew that I wanted to experience God, and it must be an everyday thing, and it must be a thing that I can enjoy in and without experiences. But I had no tools. First, I thought if God's presence is not just worshiping Him or not just worship songs, then I should clear out all the worship music of my life and experience Him without them. And it was terrible. Like, for months, I was struggling and I couldn't find Him in the silence, and I became quite depressed. And then I bought a sound equipment, and then I could listen to worship music in the little shack, and it was a great turning point. So most of the time I was struggling and I was frustrated, um, because I was putting too much effort. I thought that God is relationship with God is like relationship with someone else. Like, if you can't talk, if you can't experience a certain thing together, if you can't play together, if you can't do stuff together, then you're not in relationship. And that's not how God works. He just is. He is just present all the time. And so I had great experiences with Jesus, but in between these experiences, I was so low. I was so frustrated. I was like, yeah, I was as depressed as in the time when I was chronically depressed. Um, but there were times when I experienced God like crazy. I remember when I had the sound thing done in the house, and I could finally listen to worship music. I was listening to worship for so long that complete silence came to my mind, and I was just waving my head, no thoughts at all, complete giving up and complete freedom, and I was just enjoying nothing with God, enjoying the complete silence, and it was amazing. uh, that was the first breakthrough, living in the shack. But I also remember a time when I was listening to the song over and over again, and I was in that vision, not an open vision, just inside my head, and I saw the angels dancing, and I felt like maybe I should try their moves and try to imitate them. And as I was doing it, it was really funny, and I was laughing, and the angels were laughing, and it was great. And all of a sudden, a power hit me and threw me to the wall. And just like in the movies, when you throw someone at the wall and they are just um, um, they're just flat on the wall. Um, that's what it happened to me. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't painful. I really enjoyed it. It was funny, but it was also a bit shocking. Like, is it that dangerous to try to imitate the dance of the angels? Like, wow, I didn't think that before. So there were some experiences which I can share and I can make you wow, like sounds so great. But most of the experiences in this shack was staring out of the window, looking at the trees, and knowing that he's just simply there. Or going for a walk in the winter woods and feeling God surrounding me from underneath, around me, and above me. Yeah, the greatest lesson in living in the shack was learning to find God in the nothing, in the silence, learning how unconditional His presence is. Like, I don't need to feel anything, I don't need any particular manifestation, I don't need anything to be with Him. And after a year of this charismatic, do this, do that, it it was very weird. I had to realize that it's not just about deepening my relationship with God, but finding it for the first time. My relationship with God was more like relationship to experiences of Him, or relationship to gifts of Him, or relationship of manifestation with manifestations of Him. And finally, I had to realize that with Him, like with His person, I'm not sure that I have a direct relationship. And it was painful to realize it, because I thought I was doing great because I have seen all these miracles. Um, but it was absolutely worth it. I think the best thing you can learn about the about practicing the presence and experiencing Jesus is how to enjoy Him without anything, without worship, And this constant silence in the shack forced me to learn it because I couldn't hide anywhere. We love hiding behind bushes as Adam did, but in the shack I couldn't hide behind the ministry bush. I couldn't hide behind the worship event bush. I couldn't hide behind the mm, um, practicing my gifts bush. And I realized that how much is my actual relationship with him. And it wasn't much, and it wasn't a problem. That's why I was there. He wanted to show me what his presence is and how easily accessible it is and how simple it is. It is as simple as sitting together, as enjoying silence together. Because first I tried to, worship and pray and do the stuff, but after a few hours you are done. You are bored with it. And you think that something wrong with you because you can't like do it for days or weeks. But there's nothing wrong with you. Actually, God is waiting for you to stop all your um, ideas and strivings and finally just sit down and enjoy Him, like without anything, without any extra. I think that's what I would advise to anyone, that it's great to stretch yourself and clear out great amount of time to seek Him and experience Him, but um, I wasn't that wise about it. Like going from a busy ministry life um, into months of silence, it was shocking, and I couldn't always deal with it. So I wouldn't advise anyone to do that. I'm thankful that I've done it, and I think it was absolutely worth it. But uh, if I need to tell any advice, I would tell you that you should stretch yourself, um, but not with such a great jump. But like, if you have never tried to spend 3 hours with Jesus, then try it. Or if you never tried to um, experiment with like a whole afternoon in the presence, or if you usually spend like 10 minutes with Jesus, then you definitely should try half an hour waiting on Him. And you don't need to fill the time with your prayer and with your stuff. It's okay that you are done and you can't say anything else and you can't add anything and you can't feel a certain thing and you can't see a certain vision or anything. Like, it's okay if there is a blank space in your time with Jesus. Um, and I encourage you that if you can feel all the time you you spend with Jesus, maybe you should extend this time so that it can include some desperate giving up and I don't know what to do now, because He loves it when you give it up and when you are forced to give it up, and when you say that, okay, I've done all I could, now I don't know what to do with you, and then He says, oh, yes, I was waiting for that. And that's what happened to me. Then that's the greatest lesson of spending these 2 years in the shack, that I learned this. Like, I don't need to feel all the time. I don't need to, you know, um, make my relationship happen with God. I can just let go and enjoy sitting next to Him. And I had a lot of lessons and testimonies from the shack, and I'm gonna continue in the next session with these stories. But now I'm gonna close with this encouragement that the presence of God is available for you, and may the Spirit of God completely fill you while you're watching. And don't take anything I've said as an expectation from God, or a task to do. Just just let the Holy Spirit draw you and attract you while you are hearing these words. And I pray for you that you would experience way deeper and more profound experiences than I've ever had. And I pray for you to see God in a way no one else has seen Him before. And I know that He's gonna absolutely uh, show things that are tailor made for you and won't be like someone else's experience with God. God bless you guys. I love you, and we're gonna continue with uh, the shack stories and lessons in the part 3.